Angola, before the arrival of European powers, was a land of diverse ecosystems and complex societies. The region was not a monolith, but a tapestry woven from a multitude of Bantu-speaking groups, each with their own distinct languages, customs, and political structures. Along the northern coast, the Kongo Kingdom flourished, its influence stretching from the Congo River in the north to the Kwanza River in the south. These societies were not frozen in time. They were dynamic and interconnected, engaging in trade networks that spanned the continent. Salt, copper, textiles, and significantly, enslaved people were exchanged through these established routes, shaping social hierarchies and influencing regional power dynamics. This intricate web of relationships, built on centuries of interaction and exchange, would be irrevocably altered by the arrival of Portuguese ships on the Angolan coast in the late 15th century. Their arrival would herald a new chapter in Angolan history, one marked by both opportunity and exploitation. In 1483, Portuguese navigators, driven by the winds of exploration and the allure of the unknown, dropped anchor near the mouth of the Congo River. This marked the beginning of a complex and often tumultuous relationship between Portugal and the people of what would become known as Angola. Initial encounters were tentative, marked by a mixture of curiosity and cautious diplomacy. Trade, particularly in copper, ivory, and textiles, quickly emerged as a point of contact. The Portuguese, eager to tap into the wealth of the region and find a sea route to the riches of the East, saw an opportunity in these interactions. However, cultural misunderstandings and conflicting ambitions soon led to tensions. The Congo Kingdom, initially receptive to the Portuguese, grew wary of their growing influence and their attempts to convert the population to Christianity. By the late 16th century, the relationship had begun to sour, setting the stage for a more extractive and exploitative era. The 16th century witnessed a profound shift in the relationship between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. The discovery of the Americas by European powers, coupled with the burgeoning plantation economies in the New World, created a new and insatiable demand for labor. This demand would fuel the transatlantic slave trade, forever altering the course of history for Angola and its people. The Portuguese, already present on the Angolan coast and familiar with local trading networks, were quick to capitalize on this new market. They inserted themselves into existing systems of slavery and warfare in the region, offering firearms and other goods in exchange for captives. This marked the beginning of a dark chapter in Angolan history. What began as a trickle of enslaved Africans being transported across the Atlantic would soon swell into a torrent of human misery. Millions of Angolans would be forcibly removed from their homes, their families torn apart, their lives treated as mere commodities to be bought, sold, and exploited. As the transatlantic slave trade intensified, the dynamics of power within Angola were reshaped. The Portuguese, though lacking numerical superiority, wielded significant influence through their access to firearms and their willingness to forge alliances with local rulers who benefited from the trade. Two kingdoms, the Lunda and the Mbundu, played pivotal roles in this evolving landscape. The Lunda Kingdom, centered in present-day eastern Angola and northwestern Zambia, became a major player in the slave trade. Its rulers used their strategic position to control trade routes and extract tribute from neighboring groups, often in the form of captives. Similarly, the Mbundu Kingdom, located in central Angola, became deeply entangled in the trade. Mbundu rulers, seeking to maintain their power and acquire European goods, engaged in slave raiding and wars of expansion, fueling the demand for captives. These kingdoms, though geographically distant, were linked by the grim realities of the slave trade. Their stories highlight the complex and often tragic ways in which external forces could exacerbate internal conflicts and reshape societal structures. Section 5. Luanda, a city built on trade. The city of Luanda, founded by the Portuguese in 1575, stands as a stark reminder of the dual nature of the colonial encounter. Established as a trading post on the Angolan coast, Luanda quickly transformed into a major hub for the transatlantic slave trade, its growth inextricably linked to the human traffic that flowed through its port. Warehouses lined the waterfront, filled with goods destined for the Americas. Sugar, tobacco, and cotton, all produced with the forced labor of enslaved Africans. Luanda, though geographically distant from the plantations of the New World, was intimately connected to their brutal realities. Within the city walls, a complex social hierarchy emerged. Portuguese officials and merchants occupied the upper echelons of society, while free blacks and people of mixed race navigated a precarious existence, often facing discrimination and limited opportunities. Luanda's history is a microcosm of the broader Angolan experience during the colonial period. A story of exploitation, resilience, and the enduring legacy of the transatlantic slave trade. Section 6, Abolition and Shifting Sands, the slow death of the slave trade, 1836 to 1861. The 19th century marked a turning point in the fight against slavery. Fueled by abolitionist movements in Europe and the Americas, the transatlantic slave trade began to crumble under the weight of its own immorality. However, the road to abolition was long and arduous, fraught with resistance and setbacks. Portugal, heavily reliant on the slave trade, was slow to embrace its abolition. In 1836, the Portuguese government declared the slave trade illegal, yet the practice continued clandestinely for decades. Traders seeking to circumvent the ban found ways to profit from human misery, highlighting the deeply entrenched nature of the trade. Internal factors within Angola also contributed to the decline of the slave trade. Resistance movements, led by figures like Queen Nzinga in the 17th century and later by other leaders, chipped away at the system. The growing power of African merchants who profited from alternative forms of trade also played a role. The final nail in the coffin of the Angolan slave trade came in 1861, when the last slave ship from Angola arrived in Cuba. While the formal end of the trade marked a significant victory for abolitionists, the scars of slavery would continue to haunt Angola for generations to come. Section 7, the scramble for Africa and renewed colonialism, a continent divided. As the transatlantic slave trade waned, a new form of colonialism emerged in Africa. The late 19th century witnessed the scramble for Africa, a period of intense competition among European powers to carve up the continent and claim its resources for themselves. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, convened by European powers without African representation, formalized this division, drawing arbitrary borders across the continent and solidifying European control over vast territories. Portugal, eager to secure its claim over Angola, expanded its control inland, clashing with African groups who resisted this encroachment on their sovereignty. This period of renewed colonialism ushered in a new wave of exploitation as European powers sought to extract resources, build infrastructure to facilitate trade, and impose their own political and social systems on the African people. Section 8. Seeds of Resistance, the Long Fight for Freedom. While the colonial period was marked by oppression and exploitation, it also gave rise to resistance movements that would ultimately lead to Angola's independence. Angolans from all walks of life refused to accept foreign domination passively. Resistance took many forms. Religious movements, such as the Kimbanguist movement, provided a spiritual outlet for discontent and a vision of a future free from colonial rule. Urban workers organized strikes and protests, demanding better working conditions and an end to discriminatory policies. In the countryside, peasant rebellions erupted, fueled by anger over land alienation and forced labor. These disparate strands of resistance eventually coalesced into organized nationalist movements dedicated to achieving independence by any means necessary. The fight for freedom was long and bloody. It would take decades of struggle, sacrifice, and unwavering determination before Angola finally broke free from the shackles of colonial rule in 1975. Section 9. Legacies of Colonialism, Echoes in Modern Angola. The legacy of colonialism continues to cast a long shadow over Angola. The arbitrary borders drawn during the scramble for Africa left the newly independent nation grappling with ethnic divisions and territorial disputes. The extractive economic systems established during the colonial era, with their focus on resource extraction and export, hindered the development of a diversified and sustainable economy. The social and psychological scars of colonialism run deep. Generations of Angolans endured forced assimilation policies designed to erase their cultural identity. The systematic denial of educational and economic opportunities created deep inequalities that persist to this day. Despite these challenges, Angola has made strides in rebuilding its nation. The country has emerged from a long and brutal civil war, and its economy, fueled by oil production, has experienced significant growth. However, the task of healing the wounds of the past and creating a more just and equitable society remains a work in progress. Angola's journey since the arrival of the Portuguese has been one of resilience, resistance, and the enduring quest for self-determination. As Angola navigates the challenges of the 21st century, it does so with the echoes of its past serving as both a reminder of the human capacity for oppression and a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity.